Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode here at the Cinema Wave podcast at the Culture Wave Media Network. And we are officially gamers this week.
Gamer dudes.
We are talking about Amazon Prime Video's newest animated anthology series called Secret Level. I am one of your hosts. My name is Darian Scalamoni. I am joined by Mark Jacobino.
How's it going?
As well as Vinny Albano.
Hello, hello.
So I put this on the schedule a while ago because I was super amped for this show. And not until right before I recorded, I was like, oh, it's the guys who make like Love, Death, and Robots. And I was like, you guys have watched that show, right? And Mark's like, never seen an episode. And he's like, I've seen a little bit. So that was shocking to me, but very similar animation style in this. And you guys are the animation domination crew on the channel. So I'm excited to be in your realm for one. So thank you for allowing me to be here.
Oh, yeah. Happy to have you.
But this is an anthology series where every single episode explores a short film that takes place within a different video game universe, right? And a lot of them are iconic games that people have probably heard of. The premiere episode was Dungeons and Dragons. You get a Mega Man episode in here. You get a very unique Pac-Man episode in here. Then some more recent games that were like big, like Sifu was on here. Warhammer was on here. Armored Core was on here. Spelunky. So there's 15 episodes total in season 1. And season 2 was just announced that it was renewed for season 2 last week. So they must be doing really well with their numbers, or they at least feel confident in the series going forward. But Mark, starting with you, when you first heard about the show, were you excited about it? And how did you feel about some of the episodes that you would watch from the show?
Yeah, so we were talking off camera. I love video games. I unfortunately can't play as much as I would like to, but I keep up with everything video game. I watched the Game Awards last week. Like, I'm all in on it. So when I heard that they were doing a series that pretty much was a bunch of cinematic trailers, essentially, like those old cinematic trailers that you would see from E3 back in the day, and you'd be like, I want a whole show of just that. Like, we got it finally. So I was really excited to see that come to fruition and how they would handle these video game worlds. Like, would they expand on the story, or would they just kind of stick to what the game already told? And in some cases, the show does that, which I think is a weak point in the show for me. In other cases, I like when they just take the world and they tell just a unique story within the world. And I haven't played all the games, so I might be incorrect in that statement, but it feels like some of the shorts were more focused on just doing a mini story within the world instead of rehashing something that already happened in the game. So I may be wrong on that, but my favorite episodes were the ones like Pac-Man, where it's just like you would never
setting a new boundary,
doing something brand new. So for the most part, I like this. There were definitely like a lot of weak points, and I didn't end up watching through some episodes because I was like, this ain't it.
Yeah, and there was a lot. There was obviously a lot, and they put out 15 episodes in 2 weeks. So
yeah,
we all got through what we can get through. Vinny, what did you think through the episodes that you were able to watch of Secret Level?
It was cool. You know, I wish I was more passionate about it than I am. It was cool. I like seeing some titles that I am familiar with get reimagined in a way. Specifically Pac-Man. We'll talk more into that because it was a really interesting episode. Some other titles that actually a majority of the titles here I was not familiar with, but interesting nevertheless. And I enjoyed it. You know, there, like Mark said, there's a lot of weak points, a lot of weak episodes, but the good ones stand out.
So the way that I interpreted the way they made the show is that they were doing all short stories that were created by I believe it was all separate writers. Now I'm gonna fact check myself on that, but I'm pretty sure it was different writers on every episode that were doing these short stories that existed within the worlds. And I think what you talked about, Mark, I would agree with, where so much of it feels like it's just kind of rehashing things that feel like they already exist in the world now. So you probably, if I had to guess, you've probably played the most games in this series. Like,
honestly, I haven't, but I've watched a lot of their gameplay, and I know what goes on. Like the Sifu one, like, really cool if you've never played the game, but it essentially just retells exactly what the game is. So it doesn't really feel like a necessary story. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas Armored Core, where the story of Armored Core isn't really the important part. It's more of the gameplay. That felt cool because we got to learn more about the pilot. You know, Keanu Reeves. He's so down for video games. I love him for that.
Too.
Cyberpunk. He's Shadow in the new Sonic. Like, I just love that he's down for video games. And he gives a really cool performance. And I know in Armored Core, again, have not played the games, but my understanding is you don't see the pilots. Like, you don't really get to know about the pilots. It's really more the gameplay and the mech. And so seeing that, you know, diving into that and putting the story together of like, are these pilots like manufactured, and like, do they believe that they're manufactured? You know, there's that really cool shot at the end where he's like gonna touch the other pilot and then he just kills him, and it's like, whoa. And I think it perfectly fit like the theme of the world while also expanding it. And I think that's where the show was at its strongest.
I was gonna say, so for the people who haven't watched like a lot of Love, Death, and Robots, like some of the stories within that world are like very dark and like very, like, we're talking again. It's like what's within the title of the show. There's a lot of death. There's a good amount of gore. Like there's moments like the end of the Armored Core episode that happen like almost on a regular basis on a lot of the episodes. But the cool thing about what separates that show from this show too is that I just felt like the animation styles are a lot more unique and different in that show comparatively to this. So much of this I think is based in that Unreal Engine sort of format. I know Tim Miller obviously created this show too, and he created Love, Death, and Robots with David Fincher producing it with him. Fincher's not attached to this, which I think also hurts it a little bit in terms of the storytelling. I do agree that there are definitely some weak episodes. I think one that stood out to me was I think it was the Outer Worlds, which I think is a fairly popular video game. But the animation, and as someone who's not a big animation guy, there were so many. Did anybody else watch that episode?
I watched it.
Yeah, I watched it too.
I felt that there were so many moments where I was like, this just seems off. Like the way their mouths were moving, like certain aspects of it. It felt like a video game more than it felt like a crisp animation. Did you guys feel similar to that and that episode in general?
It reminded me of the Polar Express. However,
same.
Good
Same here.
However, I do like the story in that a lot more than I liked
some of the other ones.
A lot of them, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that story was like uncomfortable. Like the testing process, I was like, ooh, gosh.
Yeah, and that felt like, again, that vibe kind of felt a little bit more like a Love, Death, and Robots sort of thing. Armored Core was definitely one of my favorite ones, and I liked how. I mean, the other thing is just that I think Keanu's just a superior actor comparatively to a lot of the people that were doing some of the roles in this. But I thought it felt like I was watching like an episode of like a live action Gundam.
Yeah.
Like and like that was something that I really vibed with, because again, like I grew up like watching a lot of Gundam, so I was like, this is really cool. Getting to see this play out. And obviously it's not live action, but Keanu looks so hyper realistic in it that it kind of plays its own thing. You know what I mean? So that was one of my favorite ones. Warhammer was one that I think we all really enjoyed. And you were the one who let me know basically like this franchise has existed for decades, because my only reference point is that Henry Cavill loves this franchise more than anything else in the world, because he talks about it constantly. And that it was announced a couple years ago that Prime Video is going to be making a live action series of Warhammer, and then they just officially greenlit it. So I think it's going to begin filming in 2025. But how did you feel about that episode? And like, you don't have much of a reference point for Warhammer, but like, are you excited going forward now because they touched that property at least a little bit with this?
Yeah, I want to try Space Marine 2. I haven't gotten around to it. I definitely want to play it, but yeah, Warhammer has had such a crazy resurgency these like just in this past year between, you know, all of these announcements, Space Marine 2 having a great release, and then a lot of people are just like memeing about like the Horus Heresy and all these like points in Warhammer history, and now it's just like become like an online meme to talk about Warhammer lore. So it's really funny how natural it's kind of like snowballed. And this episode was just like really cool because we see like a bunch of different planets. We have really cool action, brutal action, and then we have that mystical element of the Warhammer universe where that alien takes over their minds. But what's good about it is, you know, there is that, you know, Warhammer's pretty like testosterone heavy, like all this like really dark stuff, but I like how the through line of this episode is like a boy being taken and trained to be a space marine. And what's like the main line of it, like you become fear or something like that, or like you no longer fear I forget what the like tagline
yeah.
of it, but it's like really like powerful stuff, and I appreciate that through line with the main character and the mentor that
And they shall know no fear.
and they shall know no fear. Yeah, so I really like that through line, and then the kid, he essentially like leaves him on the planet. He's like, job's not done, I'm gonna keep going, and this guy's like, I've created a monster.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really cool.
I thought the lore was something that I just felt deeper in that episode comparatively to anything else.
Oh,
like you felt like the world, even as someone who doesn't know it, I was just like, I want to live in this. Like I was
Why?
Like, no, not literally. Like I want to be in the world. That came off so wrong because I was like, I'm a demonic fuck. No, it was just more of that. It felt like it was really fleshed out. Like if you're telling me that this is a world that's existed for 30 years in terms of lore building and world building, then it makes sense why they were able to have a more fully formed, crafted story around something, even if it was an 18-minute episode. Did you feel similarly, Vinny?
Yeah, I've wanted to get in Warhammer for a while now because there's so much content. Video games, tabletop, books. My friend's really into it. And the way he talks about it, I'm like, holy shit, this is like awesome. Like, it's just like, anyhow, I felt the same way. I think this was a standout episode. I think it was really, I love the tone of it. I love how brutal and dark it is. I love how epic it is, but also like we're watching like these crazy like imperialists like just taking over. So it is really like, I'm trying to find the word, bleak, grim. Yeah. I know we talked before cameras rolling. Warhammer is usually associated with the genre of grim dark, I believe is the title of it, which is like these really, really, really like dark fantasy, like Warhammer. I'm using the word like a lot, which I have to stop. But yes, I also really appreciate, like Mark, like you said, the alien at the end. She's almost like a witch. Mm-hmm. She's very mystical, and I really like that.
It's the top-rated episode according to IMDb.
Sure. Yeah. Well, they do such a good job of just like establishing how powerful these guys are, and then they just get taken out easily, and it feels like such a weight that they died. It's like these guys are not invincible, even though they feel invincible, and she takes them out, and it's like, oh. And then it's also like just the idea, again, this is like the world building, like they're dragging a priest in a metal coffin while fighting people, and then they're like, okay, summon this demon so we could kill it. It's like, what?
It's crazy. It's a really crazy concept. It has an 8.8 on IMDb. There's only one other episode in the 8s. Then they start to drop off. I just want to go through some of the scores before we dive into some of them, just to give everyone also the reference. If you're watching this, you probably watched the show, but the frame of reference for the drop off of like how some of these episodes are just way better, right?
Yeah.
So Warhammer an 8.8, Unreal Tournament was an 8.1, Armored Core 7.7. So those were my three favorites that I saw. So I'm like, this makes sense. Okay. Sifu was 7.4. Then we have New World, which I didn't get a chance to watch. You guys both did. Is actually the 5th highest rated.
Which one was New World?
That was the Arnold Schwarzenegger one.
That was the 5th highest rated.
A 7.4.
I couldn't finish that one. Yeah. I thought it sucked.
I didn't get to watch that one yet. So I think I'll watch it just for the reference, but I probably also won't enjoy it. Honor of Kings, which Vinny and I had a chance to watch.
I didn't get to
You didn't get to see it. That's also tied at 7.4. And then it starts to drop off. Dungeons and Dragons, Pac-Man, Exodus, Outer Worlds, and then all the way down. So anything under that is under a 6.5. The show as a whole is right now currently at a 7.8, which I think is a little high. We'll get to scores obviously at the end.
It blows my mind that Pac-Man is that low. I thought that one was like one of the most creative.
Well, I think that I saw it online too, even before the show came out, or maybe when the first batch of episodes dropped, because Pac-Man was in that first batch, that people were like, there's a Pac-Man adaptation on streaming that you're never going to believe. Yeah. And I think some people were like,
disturbed?
Yeah, I think disturbed is the right word, but at the same time, I agree. I think that it was very innovative on them doing. It was like the only one that felt like they were taking a piece of IP and then reinventing it to do something entirely different.
Yeah.
So how did you also talked passionately about Pac-Man, so we can get into that discussion because it seems like that was that each of your favorite episodes?
Oh, it wasn't my favorite. I actually don't know which one would be your favorite. Maybe the Warhammer one, honestly, because that was really epic. But Pac-Man is up there. We talked before cameras rolling. Like I saw the ratings on IMDb, and it really surprises me the ones that are really low,
Yeah.
And I think it's a very creative reimagining of Pac-Man. I think it's cool. Also, oh, hold on. I wanted to say this earlier. I'm going to get this out of the way so I don't forget it. One of my biggest complaints with the series as a whole throughout all these episodes, I really hate in modern day video game and animation the whole idea of we gotta go realistic, we gotta go real, like trying to make everything look hyper realistic. I think it works in some areas like Armored Core. Keanu Reeves looks great in that. However, I think it is fair to say that having a video game that is more uniquely designed, has a more unique art style, it's just more creative and it's more imaginative. I'd much rather see creative art styles in animation and video game than trying to do hyper realistic over and over again. Like I like Mario and Legend of Zelda, and like those games are so cool because they have a unique art style to them.
Yeah.
So I much preferred the episodes in this series that had that. Pac-Man had that. Pac-Man had a great blend between like a dark, a sense of like dark realism when it came to like the amount of detail in the frame, but all the character designs and the monster designs and like when he's going through the volcanoes, it's very unique and a lot more artsy and I don't want to use the word cartoonish, but creative.
Yeah.
And I much preferred that, and why I liked the Pac-Man episode a lot more than it seemed most people did.
Yeah. Did you feel similar?
Yeah, I just think it's so cool because you could go into it blind and you could see this little orb and you'd be like, is that Pac-Man? And it keeps saying like eat more, and then you're like, okay, wait, Pac-Man does that. And then they talk about these ghosts, like these ghosts are roaming around. We need to eat them to get stronger. And then you see the ghosts, they're like these hulking creatures. And it's like, this is so creative. And then Pac-Man is just trying to get out. Like Pac-Man is the bad guy. Whereas when you're playing Pac-Man, you're like, the ghosts are the bad guy. I want to get all the points. But then you think about it, it's kind of, when you think about it as a player, like you're the selfish one, like you're trying to eat all of these things and then also terrorizing these ghosts. Like it's such a cool idea. I don't know. Like
it's like
so
super
creative.
esoteric. No, I'm glad you brought up the hyper realistic thing because part of the reason I really enjoy Love, Death and Robots too is because they have a blend of all different types of animation. Like every episode has a different animation style that I think serves the story. And there are some weak episodes of that show too, but I think there's obviously a bigger breadth of those episodes. There's more of them, but I agree. I felt like some of this, it just felt like I was like, oh, like this kind of looks like the same world I saw in the last one. Yeah. And that doesn't separate, especially when you're creating these worlds that are entirely different from one another. Like video games are entirely separate entities. Like I can't say that Halo is the same thing as Super Smash Brothers because it's not, and they're designed entirely differently. You know what I mean? So I'm glad you brought that up. I definitely agree with that. You seem to agree with that as well.
Yeah.
Pac-Man was one that I also felt it was a really unique sort of spin on seeing something that, like, if I showed that to a random person, I don't know if like off the bat they'd be like, oh, is that like a tribute to Pac-Man? Like I want to show that to people without showing them the title and be like, what video game do you think that was? And then you'll know by the end, obviously. But so much within it, and the ghosts, I think that whole sequence when he's getting like destroyed, I'm like, oh my god, dude! Like just throws him the guy who's like, do, and I'm like, this is like Donkey Kong, like literally destroying this guy. So Pac-Man was a fun one. What were some other ones that stood out to you, whether it be good or bad?
I want to just talk about Concord. Do you guys know the situation of Concord?
I do. Yes.
How crazy is it that they were so arrogant that they were like, we're gonna green light a short to go along with our huge hero shooter video game release, and the game isn't even available anymore. It's not even available anymore. It didn't even survive till this point. Like,
it didn't survive 2 weeks.
Like, how insane is that level of just like arrogance? Just like, this is a winner. Like you guys, we're doing a short. Do a short for Concord.
I kind of couldn't even believe that they stuck with releasing it, because to me, I was like, I can't believe that this exists beyond the life of the game now. And it's like, What if people are seeing that for the first time? Like, oh, that's a cool thing. Like, I want to explore the video game. Now it's like, well, too bad. You're never able to play it ever again.
The greatest entertainment flop of all time.
Ever.
It's
ever.
insane.
What, they spent like 220 million?
400 million over like 10 years.
That's
and it
crazy.
made like $400,000.
Oh my God, I did not realize
That's
it was
crazy.
that catastrophic.
It's no, and that's funny because like that $400 million budget, like some of that probably went to paying these people to make this short because
Yeah.
they were so confident in it as like a marketing thing. It's just like people have shit on Concord enough, so I feel bad also dogpiling here. But
Did you play that game?
who played that game? I think it's like peak concurrent player count was like 350 people. Like
That's
insane for an
crazy.
online multi. It's. I just wanted to bring that up.
For a $400 million budget. That's crazy.
How crazy is
That is really
Well, I mean, video games like are in the same place as like movies. They're just getting so overinflated, and they're never gonna recoup unless they have
And there's also
microtransactions and all this crazy
there's so
stuff.
many games, and there's so many different ways to do games now, with the indie game market too being bigger than it I feel like it ever has been.
It's a good spot. now.
And there's just so many studios, and there's studios being bought up by other studios, and it's just like it's definitely in a similar position to the filmmaking industry.
Yeah.
So what? So
Let's talk about the Unreal Tournament one. 'Cause I
Unreal
think we
Tournament.
all really like that one.
did you watch Unreal too?
Yeah, that was cool. That was cool.
I was really into that whole format of just like it felt like Hunger Games esque.
Yeah.
And I thought that that whole sort of mentality of like going against the robot. Well, you're not really going against the robot in the beginning anyway, because you see he's like basically being abused.
Yeah.
But the tactical aspects and the action sequences within that episode, I thought were sick.
Yeah, like these bouncing like the saw off the wall
Off
to
the
hit
wall.
someone, like really cool. And that's just like an online multiplayer game, right? Like that. So they really expanded that lore like in a cool way.
Mhm.
I thought so. I like when they did that with
Yeah,
this series.
I agree.
Mm.
That was definitely one that stood out to me as well. The one that Vinny and I could talk about a little bit because I know you haven't seen it.
Yeah.
But
Sell me on it.
Honor of Kings. I thought that was another one that I mean, again, it's had that hyper realistic style, but I did think the animation style looked a little bit different in that one. I really liked the way that they had all of the environments sort of turn over when the game master, whatever his name was telling the story of like, and he's talking about how he killed his parents, but the moon turned the tide. Like and I thought the writing in that episode also was great.
Yeah.
Like it was more superior than the other episodes. What did you think about that episode overall,
Yeah.
Vinny?
It's starting with the writing. It's very poetic, and it makes sense for that setting. It takes place in this like East Asian type of setting, right? So you think of the literature of that time, and it's very poetic. It's very almost like I don't know. When I think of it, I think of air flowing.
Yeah.
And I know you guys, we just did the Skeleton Crew recording. You guys were talking about environmental storytelling in Skeleton Crew. This episode had great environmental storytelling because it's just them playing this board game, and the environment is just shifting around them in all the very trippy ways. And it's very cool. I think conceptually it's very unique. I also love Alex Lee's voice performance. He's a great voice actor, and seeing him here is really cool. His character design in the show, very like anime looking, very like Final Fantasy character looking.
That's how I felt.
I
And
see. Okay.
I really liked the substance of the episode and how it was unique, especially within the visuals. That was easily my favorite part. I didn't come out of it being like, oh wow, that changed my life, but it was a really cool use of animation.
Well, what I was gonna do you know anything about Honor of Kings? The game?
No,
All
no.
right, and you don't either, right?
No.
So I'm
actually.
reading about it. It feels very similar to Unreal Tournament, which makes me actually like the episode more now.
Oh, cool.
Because it feels so. It's an multiplayer online battle arena game that's just quick matches on mobile.
Oh, wow, it's a mobile.
And
game.
I'm like, this is awesome to me. Like this, it's his platforms, Android and iOS.
Cool.
Wow.
And they really reinvented the world in the animation. And there's not really necessarily a lot of lore in the episode either, but it's just the environment feels similar to Warhammer, where it's like, oh, like it feels like this is an environment that I can understand, that I can wrap my brain around, that I would want to see more stories in this world, essentially. So that was another one that definitely stood out to me. Maybe talking about some of the more negative ones.
Sure.
One of the ones I talked about because it was so short and it just felt off was Mega Man. It was one that I was really anticipating because I didn't play a lot of Mega Man games, but I had a Mega Man game for Game Boy Advance that I really liked. And it was a character that it's like, people want to see Mega Man. Like, he's an iconic video game character. And they do the hyper-realistic thing, and I don't know if it necessarily works.
It's like a Pixar. Like, it was like a Pixar Disney type look.
Yes. And that one, I don't know. It was too simple of a story. It was way too quick of a story. Was that one that was one of your least favorite ones, or...
Yeah, it feels like because Mega Man was such a big part of the marketing, it just felt like they put it in there to market it for the show. So it didn't feel like genuine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought there'd be more. I wasn't hoping for an origin story, which is what we got. Essentially, a very, very short origins. Like, I wanted to see him as Mega Man, and because of the shortness of this, how short this is, you don't really get connected to the essence of the origin story. Like, I'd much rather the short start where it ended rather than how we actually had it. However, I will say, going back to my point of art style, I do give it some points because I do prefer like seeing that, because right before that I'm binging the series and it's like episode after episode after episode is like hyper realistic. It's like at that point, like, are we like, I love animation, but at this point, like, we're not even using animation as like a medium. You might as well just, like, Crossfire was a great example of like, you might as well just make a movie because there's no point.
It's true.
But I did like how in Mega Man they cartoonified it. They did some cool little animated little things.
Yeah. So. Do you think it's a case where their hands are tied, that like a lot of these video game IPs are already owned by other studios? So like if they wanted to do a Minecraft one, like they can't, or like Sonic, like I feel like there's a lot of video game IP that's been bought up and they can't touch it, unfortunately.
I think it's interesting because I also think so. The last episode, which I know neither of you guys watched, but playtest is like, it's kind of like a tribute to PlayStation. Like they have like a lot of iconic PlayStation video games and characters covered, even if it's for like a few seconds. And a lot of the things that Prime is doing are these video game like adaptations that are connected to PlayStation. Like God of War was announced, and that's going to be on Amazon.
Yeah. Was Horizon also?
Horizon was another one that's going to go to Amazon. So I think that they want to play in the PlayStation world a little bit more because they have that connection with them. PlayStation also has their own studio. I mean, they made Uncharted, the movie. I didn't see it. I heard it wasn't great, but I know that it exists.
It wasn't going to be better than the game. So.
Yeah. So, but I do think that's an interesting point, Mark, because I think that with Love, Death, and Robots, you're starting from scratch. You're like, okay, I'm going to create any story I want. And like, the best episode of that show is one that takes place on a pirate ship. If you watch the show, you know what I'm talking about. But that one's based on like an iconic short story that's like kind of unadaptable for anything that's like, it wouldn't be a feature. You know what I mean? Like, but it's in that hyper realistic style, and it's just really, really, really good storytelling. You know what I mean? And I think that the other thing that hamstrings them sometimes is that some of these video games aren't rich enough in the lore, or they're just doing something like Mega Man feels like something where they're just like, oh, like this is what we were able to do with it on such a short notice. You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, well, like how short notice did you have? You know what I mean? Like you didn't have to, could have taken your time on the show. You could have done something a little bit different. Like, I don't know. Would you guys rather almost, because we get, how many episodes? We get a lot of episodes. We get 15 episodes in this as shorts. And that's what Love, Death, and Robots is too. But would you guys rather have something where it's like you get 6 episodes of like 20 to like 40-minute episodes?
I don't know, because it's like there's a strength in the shortness of these episodes that if they go too long, it's like this overstayed its welcome. I think I like when stories aren't limited either way. Like if they want to be a 30-minute story, like go for it. But if they also want to be a 10-minute story, like that's fine too. Like the Warhammer one was 20 minutes, but like if they had a 30-minute story, like I hope they weren't limited to say, no, we have to be under 20 minutes for all these. Like, I just don't want them to be limited in any capacity.
Yeah, Vinny?
Yeah, I agree with that. I actually like this format that we do have because I like seeing more properties getting the spotlight. than, like Mark said, having like a 40-minute episode to a series that I don't know, and then by the end of it, I still don't really care about, you know?
Yeah.
So I do like that the 15-episode structure. I will say, though, I'm not that familiar. Like, I'm not a big gamer. I play games, but I'm not a big gamer. So I'm interested if for season 2, if they bring in some other property titles that I'm more familiar with. So, yeah.
For a season 2, because we know it's been announced, what are some worlds that you'd like to go to?
I want to see Cyberpunk. I loved Cyberpunk 2077. I thought it was fantastic. CD Projekt Red always creates amazing worlds, so I want to see that because it's so rich and it's so stylized and it's so dense with opportunities for storytelling that I think they could just do anything they wanted and it would work great. They probably don't own Halo, but I loved the Halo.
Well, the show was canceled.
Okay, so maybe it's out there.
They might be able to.
I loved the Halo cinematic trailers back in the day, so I would love to see something, whether it's an ODST or if it's Spartans, that would be really fun. I'll keep thinking, but you
Vinny,
guys,
what do you got?
Ooh, I'm trying to think. My video game knowledge is very limited.
Even if
I
it's some of
feel
your
like,
favorite games ever that you would like to see in this world.
The thing is, I want to see a lot of Nintendo stuff, but that's never going to happen.
I think the same way.
I
I'm like, I would love, and I hope they're going to eventually get to this, which I think they will. But with Nintendo, with Illumination, I feel like they need to do a Smash movie. Like, if they don't, they're missing out. Like,
yeah, right. Wouldn't that be fun?
That's my favorite video game franchise ever. So, that is what I would want to see. But
yeah. I don't know any other properties that I'd like to see, honestly. Maybe I'll have to think about that.
They could do Souls, From Software games like Elden Ring or Dark Souls. They totally could, because those games are so cinematic with so little dialogue. I feel like they could have a lot of fun in those, but again, I don't know. And I think Sony just actually bought FromSoft, so actually they would fall under the umbrella, and if they have that relationship, we might get a Souls one, which would be really fun, because
I could see that happening.
Those are really cool.
Season.
Those would be really cool.
I can see that happening for next season.
Yeah.
Selfishly, one of my other favorite video game franchises is Gears of War. So I'd like to see Gears of War, especially because it works in that hyper realistic setting sometimes.
They're making a movie for that, or a TV show?
That's the movie for Gears has been in development for, I think, literally 20 years.
Okay.
Maybe not 20. No, because the first game came out 2006. I think 2009 they announced they were going to do a movie, and it's gone through so many developmental problems.
Wow.
So who knows if it's ever going to come out. I just like that world, and I like to see them explore it more in a cinematic format.
Yeah.
Going completely off the beaten path, I would like to see Jet Set Radio, because I think it's so different, cool. And I think you could do a poppy art style that would be really cool and different. Even if they did something in a Spider-Verse or a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle style, I think that would be cool for that. And that was one of my favorite games on Dreamcast when I was a kid. So that would be something different and cool, where you're also kind of tapping into something where it doesn't need to be as maturely themed. And I would like to see them, even Little Big Planet, I think you could do something really cool and different in that way. And we see Sackboy in the last episode of this, so it's not like they can't use them. So those are the three for me that stick out.
I will say, actually, something that popped in my mind. I know there's a Metal Gear film in production. I don't know the status of that.
It's a live action.
Yeah, I remember Oscar Isaac was supposed
to play Snake. Yeah, he's been attached to it for a long time. I think he's a producer on it, but I don't know if he's playing the character anymore.
Yeah, because I love Kojima games. That's another property that, out of the small amount of games that I really like, I like the Metal Gear franchise a lot. I'd like to see whatever if Secret Level has a chance to adapt something Metal Gear, that would be cool.
That would be
maybe
cool.
Not Snake here. Hold on, I'm pitching.
He's pitching. Here we go.
Amazon, credit me if this happens, right? Let's say they acquire the rights or whatever. I don't know how it worked, because I think
it's a partnership that they have. Yeah, okay. With certain. I mean, again, if one's a mobile game, they're probably let's just get a bigger spotlight on our game. You know what I mean?
So the Metal Gear lore is very big and confusing, and it's Kojima. He's the GOAT, but everything is just that guy's a clone of that guy, and that guy's a clone of this guy, but this happened there, and this and the right. So don't focus on Snake. focus on Raiden instead. So we do a Raiden and we do like a little like side mission that Raiden went on, but also like Raiden went missing at one point or whatever. So what you can do, this game is so good. Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. It's like the hack and slash that takes place years and years and the years in the future when Raiden is fully cybernetic, like from head to toe. He's just a cyborg. That would be dope. Like I don't care what because in that game, admittedly, there's not much of a story. The story that is there is cool, but it's very like simple, right? Yeah. It's very like, I guess, anime, right? But that would be really cool to just do like Raiden versus Jetstream Sam or something, you know?
Yeah, I think that would be cool. I mean, that's another franchise that people have been waiting on for so long. Now my brain is going. I'm like, Ninja Gaiden would be another one that I think would be sick.
I'm shocked there was no horror video games in this. Like all of the iconic horror games.
I bet you next season we get Callisto Protocol, which is a newer horror game.
Which was like,
was it not that
lukewarm? Well, it was like lukewarm reception for that one. Like it was just like a worse Dead Space.
Interesting. Oh, maybe they'll do Dead Space.
I would love to see Dead Space.
And they're making a Dead Space TV show.
Of course.
That was the other thing. Like as like we're talking, like there's so many of like a video game IP now is so rich. Like people are just taking from it because you're seeing these successes too. Whether it's Sonic, whether it's Super Mario Brothers, whether it's not Borderlands
and not Halo,
not Halo. But even Uncharted made money. I feel like there's another one that I'm forgetting.
Last of Us,
obviously, which is probably the most superior of them.
Yeah.
But I'm interested. I think that as long as they don't mess around with like Uncharted, again, I haven't seen it, but based on what I hear, it's just like it's nowhere near the level of quality of the games, and the games are so great that it's like, why do you even mess with this if you don't have the right story and you don't have the right setup for it? But I guess we should go into scores now.
Sure.
For the series as a whole. I know it's hard because we're encapsulated. Oh, Vinny's got another pitch.
Hold on. Sorry, before we go into scores, I wanted to get your guys' opinion. Did you guys like the Dungeons and Dragons episode?
I think I liked it the least.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought it was okay.
Yeah, I didn't love it. I thought that now, again, in terms of character design and getting different sort of getting to see different things, I thought it was cool. But I don't know that it's weird too because I don't have much of a background in Dungeons and Dragons, but I saw the live action movie and I really liked the live action movie. Like I think
it's really fun.
I really liked the live action movie, and this I was like, yeah, it's pretty cool, but I didn't love it. You were a big fan?
Yeah, I like.
You're also a big D&D guy.
Yeah,
so.
very, very big D&D. I mean, I've been a part of multiple campaigns on a weekly basis for years now. And I liked seeing how one monk representation, because no one chooses the monk class. My friend Owen played a monk for like 2 years. So I liked seeing this little monk beat up them guys. So that's cool. Like, and I think as a D&D nerd, I appreciated seeing a lot of it. However, I do prefer the tone and the whimsy of the movie adaptation than something like this, because D&D is supposed to be fun, and like you're at a table with your friends, like it's gonna get really goofy and whimsy. Like even as dramatic as you want to take it sometimes at the table, it's going to get stupid and whimsy, which I like about the movie, which I feel like this short kind of lacks.
Yeah, so, I think that's fair. Yeah. I hope that before we get to I hope that movie gets like its due, because even like I showed that movie to my family because I liked it so much. And like, again, like my parents are older, like my brothers never played D&D. Everybody loved that movie in my family. They were like, this is fun. Like, it's just a fun movie.
That's good.
The comedy was great in it, I thought too. But anyway, scores. I know it's harder because we're encapsulating 15 episodes and none of us watched all of them, so we're going based on the ones we've watched. But if you can combine it into an overall score, where would you lean? Do you want me to not start with you? You want to think on it for a second?
I mean, I could just throw out like a 6.5. Like, okay. I enjoyed some, but if you look at those, like, were they amazing enough for me to bump the score to make up for all the ones that I was not interested and didn't like? I don't think so. And like you guys have said a bunch of times, I think there was a lot more opportunity to do different art styles, to explore the worlds a bit better, where, you know, I just don't think it was consistent enough for me to give it like a higher score.
Yeah, that makes sense. Vinny?
Yeah, I give it a 6.5. Actually a 6. Because like I don't think it's bad, but I don't think it's great.
Yeah.
Like the Warhammer episode will definitely stay with me. The Pac-Man episode will definitely stay with me. Other than that, even other episodes that I did enjoy, like I said, I enjoyed the story to like the Outer Worlds and Armored Core, but I have a feeling like a year goes by, I'm gonna forget about it.
Right. Yeah.
I'm gonna give it a higher score than both of you, but I think that's because there's like 5 episodes off the top of my head that I really enjoyed. Everything after that, I was just like, it was fine or it wasn't good. So I'm gonna go with a 7. I think it's solid.
Sure.
I think in comparison to Love, Death, and Robots, it's like nowhere close to that show, but. I am intrigued to see where they go with season 2 and what video game worlds they sort of dive into.
Yeah.
At the end of it, but we have a lot of hopes and wishes for where they go in season 2. So hopefully you're listening, Amazon.
Yeah.
We enjoyed it enough that we're willing to give it a chance for season 2.
Definitely.
So thank you guys for watching this episode. Let us know in the comments what are your guys' thoughts on Secret Level. You should let us know what some of your favorite episodes, some of your least favorite episodes in the series. We'd love to have a conversation with you guys. And any episodes that we maybe didn't mention that either maybe we didn't watch for whatever reason, if you guys really like them, recommend them in the comments, and maybe we'll go back and check those ones out as well. If you guys can also give this video a like and subscribe to us here at the Culture Wave Media Network. We're covering all things in film and television. And you can also follow us on all our social media platforms that are below me in the video currently, and also in our YouTube description. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on Threads, we're on TikTok, and then obviously on YouTube, we're posting episodes, if not every day, every other day. So please check all that stuff out if you can. Just signing off, I am Darian Scalamoni.
I'm Mark Acabino.
And I'm Vinny Albano.
And we'll see you guys next time.
This is The Culture.